Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Staff Picks show with Devon and Joy. I'm Devon. I work at the Worcester Public Library along with my coworker and co-host Joy. Hi, Joy.
Hi, how are you today?
Doing all right. I was happy spring was here, but then it got cold and now it's rainy.
But it's still spring. Oh, we've been waiting for that.
Me too. All right, so almost everything we're talking about today you can find online for free with the Libby or Overdrive app as an ebook or downloadable audio. We're also doing physical pickup of items. If you want the print book or book on CD or whatever, you can call ahead or reserve those online. If you're not sure how to do any of that, just call the library or comment below and we'll help. Okay, so now I'm going to switch screens so you can see what we have in store for you this week. And as usual, I'll be doing the fiction, Joy will do the nonfiction. You may know that this is Women's History Month, so we are featuring a lot of titles by ladies. But my first one, I wanted to pick something for the guys. So my first fiction choice, Leave the World Behind. This one came out in October of 2020. The book is described as a disaster novel without the disaster that's attuned to the complexities of parenthood, race, and class. It's also been compared to Cormac McCarthy's The Road, which I thought was very interesting. This book was a finalist for the 2020 National Book Award, and it was also a Best Book of the Year, according to Washington Post, NPR, Esquire, Kirkus, Library Journal, Book Page, LA Times, The New Yorker, The Boston Globe, and a bunch of other people recommend it, including my coworker, Joy.
Yes, it's really good.
In the book, Amanda and Clay go to a remote corner of Long Island, expecting a vacation, a quiet reprieve from life in New York City, quality time with their teenage son and daughter, and a taste of the good life in a luxurious home they've rented for the week. But a late night knock on the door breaks the spell. Ruth and GH are an older couple. It's their house, and they've arrived in a panic. They bring the news that a sudden blackout has swept the city, but in this rural area, with the TV and internet now down, and no cell phone service, it's hard to know what to believe. Should Amanda and Clay trust this couple, and vice versa? What happened back in New York? Is the vacation home, isolated from civilization, a safe place for their families? And are they safe from each other? This book got starred review from Publishers Weekly, and some reviewers say the book captures the general panic of 2020. NPR said this is a slippery and duplicitous novel. It's atmospheric and prescient. Its rhythms of comedy alternating with shock and despair mimic so much the rhythms of life right now. That's more than enough to make it a signature novel for a blasted year. So I'm sure we all remember feeling anxiety in 2020, and it sounds like this book plays off of that. And I think it's fascinating that it's being called a disaster novel without a disaster. So along with that and Joy's recommendation, I'm going to be putting this one on my to be read list. Here's one from Joy.
My first choice for this month is We Keep the Dead Close, A Murder at Harvard and a Half Century of Silence by Becky Cooper. This was a Boston Globe and a PW Best Book of the Year 2020. On a cold January day in 1969, Jane Britton, a promising young graduate student in Harvard University's anthropology department, was bludgeoned to death in her off-campus apartment. Her body was allegedly sprinkled with red ochre, a substance commonly used in burial rites in the Middle East, where Jane and her colleagues had done much of their work. Who killed Jane Britton? The slightly sinister married professor who may or may not have been sleeping with her? A jealous boyfriend? The couple next door? One of many rejected suitors, most of them slightly eccentric young men who formed part of Britton's inner circle? Oddly, neither the university nor Britain's grief-stricken parents appeared to be as interested in solving the crime as might have been expected, and the investigation stalled, then languished for 50 years. All of this makes for a very satisfying Agatha Christie-type murder mystery, filled to the brim with colorful characters, twists and turns, false leads, and red herrings. But We Keep the Dead Close is more than that. Author Becky Cooper uses the circumstances surrounding Britain's murder as a lens through which to view the place of women in academia during a time of transition. When Radcliffe, the women's college associated with Harvard, was on the verge of closing, and women were beginning to speak out against widespread sexual harassment and the biases endemic to the quest for tenure at Harvard and other universities. In addition, Cooper strips the field of archaeology of much of its Indiana Jones-type mystique, exposing the tedium, discomfort, claustrophobia, and petty intrigues that plagued the digs in which Britain participated. Perhaps the most intriguing mystery here is Jane Britton herself. Who is this person who gazes out at us from the cover of We Keep the Dead Close? Was she a fearless feminist pioneer, a brash, ambitious, and not always likable academic, a stereotypical femme fatale, or was she perhaps a slightly insecure young woman who was, as the case with so many women of that era, unsure as to whether she could achieve success in her chosen field and still find the love she so obviously craved? Britton's murder was eventually solved, not surprisingly, through the use of DNA. Warning: the identity of the perpetrator may actually disappoint you, but the story itself will not.
Well, I didn't know that they were able to identify the killer, so it's good
yes,
at least.
They did. 50 years later.
Wow. All right, well, here's my next fiction choice. The Widows of Malabar Hill. This is book 1 in the Perveen Mystery Series, and it came out in November of 2018. This book was partly inspired by the woman who made history as India's first female attorney. That's her on the right, and her name is Cornelia. The book is also said to be a mix of many genres, including a traditional mystery, domestic fiction, historical fiction, and legal thriller. This book won a ton of awards: the Mary Higgins Clark Award, the Agatha Award for Best Historical Novel, the Macavity Award for Best Historical Mystery, and Publishers Weekly, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and the Times of India called it the best book of the year for 2018. The book, as it shows on the cover there, is set in 1920s India. Perveen Mistry just joined her father's law firm, becoming one of the first female lawyers in India. Armed with an education from Oxford, women's rights are especially important to her. Mistry Law has been appointed to execute the will of Mr. Omar Farid, a wealthy Muslim who left 3 widows behind. As Perveen examines the paperwork, she notices all 3 of the wives signed over all their inheritance to charity. Perveen is suspicious. One widow signed with an X, meaning she probably couldn't read the document. The Farid widows live in seclusion, never leaving the women's quarters or speaking to men. Are they being taken advantage of? Perveen tries to investigate, and tensions escalate into murder. Now it's her responsibility to find out what really happened and to make sure no innocent women or children are in further danger. This book got starred reviews from Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and Booklist. The series has also been compared to the Maisie Dobbs series and the Mary Russell Mystery series. The Los Angeles Times said, the multicultural, multi-faith world where Perveen lives, works, and tries to find love illuminates a bygone era and offers a perspective relevant to today's attention to women's rights and equality. So you might remember me saying in the past that I learn all my history from historical fiction. And this sounds like a great opportunity. I'm really fascinated, by the different cultures and different religions living in close quarters. And reading about this book, the three widows that Perveen interacts with can't see any men. And since there are no other male lawyers, Perveen's really their only opportunity. So I just am amazed at that fact. If you're like me, you want to give this one a shot, we have it in multiple formats. Here's one from Joy.
My next choice is Golem Girl, a memoir by Riva Lehrer. Riva Lehrer was born with what Jewish tradition refers to as both bright and dark luck. Her bright luck was that although she was born with a severe form of spina bifida, her birth took place in 1958 in a good hospital, and she was treated by physicians who were willing to use all of the state-of-the-art medical technologies available to them to save her fragile life. And what about her dark luck, which, by the way, is not the same as bad luck? Well, before Riva was born, her mother had experienced several miscarriages. And what kind of parents under those circumstances, and especially in light of the Holocaust, which had taken place so very recently, would not cherish a living Jewish child? And Riva was cherished. So why does she call herself the Golem Girl? In Jewish legend, the golem is a kind of Frankenstein monster created from components of the human body for the purpose of protecting the Jewish community of Prague from its enemies. But, as might have been predicted, he gets too big for his britches and becomes a monster. And Riva, whose body had been stitched together by surgeons willing, in a sense, to play God, and who is sometimes considered monstrous as a result, identifies with the golem. Golem Girl is, as promised, a memoir. We follow Riva through childhood, school activities, family tragedies, and middle school crushes, and into an adulthood, punctuated by pain, yes, but also rich in friendship, romantic relationships with both men and women, political activism, and creative endeavor. Many of her exciting and provocative paintings illustrate this work. Lehrer has not given us a story about a plucky little girl who overcomes her disability. She has no desire to overcome her disability. She wants to fully inhabit the body she has. Perhaps most importantly, as an artist, she hopes to prod her readers into looking at the body differently. What, she asks, if we begin to see disability not as misfortune, but as variation? For myself, she says, I want a new medical language, one that lets us describe ourselves and be described with clinical accuracy, yes, but also as fascinating and wonderful phenomena. Might I describe my spina bifida as a poetic occurrence? Can I say that my spine is awe-inspiring? Nature is awe-inspiring and perverse. There is wild inside what we call abnormal. I am whole.
I saw some of the artwork by this author and it's very powerful.
Yeah, if nothing else, dear reader, I would hope you'd pick this book up and look at the art that she's created.
Absolutely. All right, here's my next choice. Check it out, Joy. I snuck in a romance.
No! Every time, Devon.
This book, Bringing Down the Duke, is book one of the League of Extraordinary Women. This one came out in September of 2019. It's described as a progressive and fiery love story, and it's also considered to be one of the best romances of 2019. It's set in England in 1879. Annabelle Archer has lived with her cousin, a clergyman, since her parents' death, but now she's garnered a place among the first female students at the University of Oxford. In return for her scholarship, she must support the women's suffrage movement. Her task? Recruit men of influence to join their cause. Her target is Sebastian Devereux, the calculating Duke of Montgomery who steers politics at the Queen's command. And as I learned, Queen Victoria was a huge opponent of women's suffrage. Annabelle's challenge is not to give in to the attraction she has for the man who opposes everything she stands for. Sebastian is horrified to find a suffragist has infiltrated his ducal home, but the real threat is his feelings for the green-eyed Annabelle. He needs a wife of equal standing to secure the legacy he's worked to rebuild, not an outspoken commoner who could never be his duchess. But as the greatest strategist in the kingdom, surely he could claim this alluring blue stocking without a ring? Locked in battle with a rising passion, Annabelle learns just what it takes to topple a duke. This book got starred reviews from Publishers Weekly, Kirkus, Library Journal, and Booklist. It also gives some nods to Pride and Prejudice for all you Jane Austen fans out there. Author Chanel Cleaton said, set against the backdrop of the British suffrage movement, Bringing Down the Duke is a witty, richly detailed, historically significant, and achingly romantic celebration of the power of love and the passionate fight for women's rights. This stunning blend of history and romance will enchant readers. So I'm already a fan of historical romance, but the reviewers for this book said that it redefines the historical romance genre. So I'm pretty excited, and you know I'm going to be reading this one as well. And here's one for Joy.
Okay, I may just try it.
Yay!
My last choice for this month is The End of Everything, Astrophysically Speaking, by Katie Mack. It all started with the Big Bang, right? Over 13 billion years ago. Most scientists, at least, are in accord about that. What happens next is a bit more controversial. Most, though not all, agree that in an unimaginably short time, cosmic inflation occurred, followed by a cool down, during which matter coalesced, galaxies, planets, and stars formed, and billions of years later, life emerged on a pretty blue planet in an insignificant solar system. Meanwhile, the universe continues to expand. But what about the end? From an astrophysical perspective, well, not pretty. Just listen to the top 5 contenders for our eventual demise. There's heat death. Not death by heat, but the death of heat, where the universe just gets emptier and emptier and colder until nothing is left. Then there's the big crunch, where the Big Bang boomerangs back on us. Or the big rip, where something we can't actually see called dark energy rips the universe apart. And finally, my own personal favorite, vacuum decay. That's where the force field that holds everything, and I do mean everything, together in some kind of stable state gives way, and well, never mind. It could happen at any moment, and we won't know what hit us. And finally, then, there is the bounce, where the whole thing ends and then starts over. Sorry, Katie Mack, if I've managed to hopelessly mangle any of this. These are scenarios that not even the sainted Rod Serling could make up. Theoretical physicists are crazy in a delightful sort of way, of course. Mac, who has thousands of followers on Twitter and whose book catalyzed a bidding war among 8 publishers, admits that all of this can be pretty depressing, but she, for one, is not depressed. In fact, one of her reviewers referred to her approach as jaunty. She assures us that the end of everything, astrophysically speaking, is unlikely to occur anytime soon. Try billions of years. And if we need something to worry about, we're better off keeping our smoke detectors charged and eating one meatless meal a week. Because while global warming will not have much, if any, effect on the ultimate fate of the universe as a whole, it may just destroy all of the people, plants, and animals on the pretty blue planet we love. And on that note,
Well, out of the 5 ways the end might come, I think heat death doesn't sound too bad. I'll just wear a lot of blankets and fuzzy
yeah.
socks.
And I just love vacuum decay because it's so crazy. It is so crazy.
It sounds good. All right, that brings us to the end of our episode for this week. Don't forget to give us some likes and loves if you've enjoyed our video, and we'll be back the first weekend of next month with our new releases show. Thanks for watching.
See you later, fellow readers.